On this episode of the Founders Podcast, we had Bruce Walker, co-founder of FutureX. It was an absolutely excellent, really insightful podcast with somebody who clearly has a very clear vision of what the future of entrepreneurship should look like, and with the future of not just Scotland but the world in terms of the way that business should work, and how we should be more socially responsible and in general just be better business people. I thoroughly enjoyed talking to Bruce. It was an excellent.
Definitely. It's great to see someone champion what business should be, and to actually give people that are thinking of having a social entrepreneurial business a place to congregate and have a focal point. There's not enough of that, I don't think, in the UK. So it's good that we have one in Edinburgh.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I think the thing that I'm not so sure people will get through the podcast, because it's not maybe the clearest thing, but Bruce was only 15 when he started doing this. I mean, the guy's 25 and the organisation or one of the events that he puts on is 10 years old. It's coming up for being 10 years old.
That's incredible.
It is incredible. I mean, rightfully enough, he says that it was partially running before he got involved, but to be 25 and be a part of something that's 10 years old from that perspective, it's incredibly an achievement.
Definitely one to follow.
But you can definitely see that he's got a passion and he's got a drive to make a difference that you don't always see in people, and to have somebody who is not only producing resources but as a resource that's available to people who are looking to start on an entrepreneurial journey is something that gives me a little bit of hope that things are going to get better. But it was an excellent podcast. I think we both agree, and we hope that everybody listening enjoys. Okay, perfect. Thank you for coming in, Bruce. Much appreciated.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, for anybody that doesn't know who you are, do you mind just telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do and what your business is? And
Sure.
Go from there.
So I am one of the co-founders of FutureX. We are an organisation that is really about supporting purpose-driven businesses, organisations, people. And we've created this platform where we can bring together business leaders from around the world to really talk about the challenges that face entrepreneurs and companies. So we run a bunch of international summits. We run programs. We link entrepreneurs in Scotland, UK to Silicon Valley and to Berlin. Really about creating this global ecosystem in the knowledge that we need businesses to be responsible. We need businesses to be purpose-driven, to be innovative, to not just make money, which is important for everyone, but also to look out for people, look out for the world that we live in, and just be conscious, aware of what you're doing and the kind of ripple effects and impact that can have. Yeah.
So how did you get there? How did you? Because that seems like quite a lofty goal in terms of what you're looking to achieve. So how is it that you managed to get to that place? Like, what was the?
So when this goes out, I will have turned 25.
Happy birthday!
Thank you. So a lot has happened in a fairly short space of time. Although I was realizing that in 2 years' time, the Startup Summit, which is one of our biggest events, will be 10 years old.
Oh, wow.
Which is weird.
That's crazy. 10 years?
Strange. Yeah, it'll be 10 years old. So the Startup Summit ran a year before I was involved in it. And actually, the first year it ran, I was still in high school. And we ran our own entrepreneurship event, which was just like, no one was telling me I could start a business or how to start a business. Once you got to that stage in school, everyone's like, what's next? What job do you want to do? Which university course are you going to pursue? And I was like, well, actually, opportunity to run a business is quite a cool thing. So we just ran one event as part of Young Enterprises company program. And like 135 people came along. I emailed Alan Sugar because used to watch The Apprentice at that time. I thought that's how business was done, right? And suddenly I got into a dialogue with Alan Sugar's office about the event we were running in our school, and then they decided to give us a quote, an endorsement from Lord Sugar, and that started like a series of events
wow.
that led me on to people actually wanting to attend our stuff.
That must have been amazing as a 15-year-old to get an endorsement by Alan Sugar. You must have been like, I've got this whole thing figured out.
Well, you know, it taught me a couple of things. One is that these things are so much easier than you think they are. You know,
Right.
It's, you know, so I found this PR agency and I sent an email to everyone in the PR company on the website. Any email address with Frank PR in it, I emailed them. And eventually I got a response. And I'd be like, we've received all 12 of your emails, Bruce. And I think they only got back in touch with me so I would stop hounding them. And then they were like, you know, Alan can't make it, but what else can we do? And it was actually my idea for them to give us a quote. But the truth is, they asked me to write the quote. And then I send it to them, and then they sign off on it.
And they approve it, right.
So, and I realise that's how it works often when you ask for quotes from people, is that people might say, well, you write it and see if it aligns.
Yeah.
So it turns out these things are easier than I thought. But I guess had the foresight to take that and stick it everywhere. I wanted everyone to know Alan Sugar was backing this. But funny thing about where I was at the time is I don't think people believed me.
That was a real
that was
quote?
real.
Yeah.
So I think they saw, 17-year-old lad. That's probably he's maybe
Made it up.
It made it up.
Yeah.
And that is a funny thing. That is just a reality I've found sometimes being in Scotland is that people are cynical about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yes, that's good. It's good to know that it's not just us that have had that experience of. I wonder why people are so cynical about these things.
I think that it is sometimes difficult to stick your head above the parapet and be counted and to be seen. And when you do that, I think people are just, I don't know, maybe they're just wondering, is it real? Should you be doing that? You're taking a bit of a risk. I wouldn't take a risk, and just not sure how to respond to it. I found a lot of the cynicism out later on. So people weren't telling me this. It was other people that were telling that then eventually got back to me.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I don't think we have a culture of. I think we're working on it. Obviously, you're working on it. It's something that you're trying clearly to make a difference in. But I don't think we have a culture of, if entrepreneurship's the right word, even we don't have a culture of supporting ideas. We don't have it's not something that even I remember distinctly in school being told, no, you can't, more regularly than I was told, yes, you can. Yeah. It's very much, that's cemented in the way that we think of, actually, no, this is not the path that you should follow. This is the path you should follow because this is the beaten path. This is the one that we know you'll find success in. Mm-hmm. But that's all too often the path that leads you to a lack of satisfaction in your life.
Yeah, and I think the reality is that most ideas are rubbish. And
yes.
But that is not a reason not to pursue them.
No.
So, like, Uber is a rubbish idea when you extract it from Uber, the company. Originally, to get into a stranger's car, to be driven around, is a weird thing to do. Same with Airbnb, When Airbnb first came out, I told my parents about it, they were like, madness.
Yep.
You do not sleep on a stranger's couch.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah. Great advice.
Yeah.
Solid parenting.
Yeah.
But the reality is it's not about the idea in itself, it's the execution. It's who you build around the idea and what critical mass and how you develop it. And that's what we should always be encouraging people. So I get young entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs coming to see me all the time. And I never sit there and say, bad idea. I just say to them, what's the next step then? How do you develop this? And because they're often too early it might be successful, it might not. I don't want to be that guy that said no to Google. I want to be the guy that says, take that next step. Go and validate it a little bit further. Have another conversation. And that's the culture we need to create where we encourage people to take risks. And they can be little risks. And sometimes those little risks are just like a personal reputation risk where you're like, I'm going to tell someone my idea.
Yeah.
And then see what happens. What feedback do I get?
Yeah.
I think that's the culture we need to create.
It's fascinating. It's an interesting thing because a lot of the time with these, you have two very specific trains of thought on how it is that you should raise entrepreneurs. One of them is just beating the shit out of them until their idea is either mush or it's held resiliently against the abuse that you've given them, or it's like yours, which is just I'm not saying that your idea is perpetual encouragement, but it's about pushing them in a direction that encourages them to fail themselves or to succeed themselves, but not to be shat on early on.
So we have quite a few business come to us. Because we work in digital. Like we help businesses at early stage as well as at a more developed stage.
Mm-hmm.
And something that comes up quite a lot is they have an idea, but they don't want to share it with anybody because they feel that other people are going to steal their IP. And I'm always saying it's maybe a bit too early to be considering what other people are going to be doing.
Yeah.
Like, get out there and prove that it's valuable and that people want it first.
Yeah.
So what would you say to any business like that where they have it, maybe they have an idea that they think could be the next Google, Facebook, whatever it is?
So first thing is ideas are cheap. Everyone's got them. You know, my mum's never done calling me with the next $1 billion idea that she thinks I should pursue. So ideas come thick and fast to people. You need to tell people in order to realize if there's any validity to it at all. And the critical part is that if you have a technical process to how you implement your idea, you don't need to share that. That's not the bit you need to tell people how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
You can just say to people, I think there's a problem over here, and I think I've got a solution to solving that problem. And that's what I would encourage people to do. You need to tell people, be selective. If you go meet someone who you think is maybe the future biggest competitor in this space, then maybe you don't tell them the detail of how of how you're going to do it. But absolutely, you need to tell people, and you need to get out of that mindset that you should keep it to yourself, because no one's successful on their own. You can only be successful when you build an ecosystem of people around you.
Yeah.
And so, get out there and tell people for sure.
It's one of those things that we've spoken about. We've had experiences when we started our business. We had an idea for another one amongst a group of peers that we had at university. So we started just pre-university, then we went through university, our final year, and then went out and did it. But during university, we had an idea for something that we wanted to build. We found a group of guys who we thought would maybe be interested in building it with us. Mm-hmm. But before we even got it on paper, before we even got through the stages of making a concrete concept and putting it in place, there was conversations about ownership. And obviously that just showed us that they were not the right people to pursue the concept with. In fact, it wasn't a good concept point blank. But as we all too often find, and people ask us all the time when it comes to our business, is how is the business split? Between the two of us, how do you deal with conflict? Which is not something that we have a great deal of experience, luckily enough, in talking about. But people are super protective of concepts that don't have any value yet. Yeah,
absolutely. I think so it depends on what stage you're at, because I think that you need to have the honest, upfront conversations early. You know, there's one thing to gather a group of people and have a conversation about, should we pursue this? And if you get into the minutiae over ownership and rights and all that stuff at that stage, it's kind of like, where's your mind at? Do you really want to do this to solve the problem we're talking about, or do you think you're going to own X% of a future company? Because I'm not sure that's the right mindset.
No.
However, once you've decided you're going to pursue the idea, you need to have the serious conversations up front, early, and ask yourself the questions that you would find difficult to ask when it becomes tense, but are easy to ask when you're in a safe space. Because it is hard if conflict does arise and you're or you've not clarified, who's in charge, who makes the final call, who does this, how will it look? Because that matters for the foundations of the company. And they can change over time, but radical candor, I think, is really important. And that links to the point before about super encouraging for people at that early stage. So want them to foster ideas and move to the next stage. But I'm also one of these people who, once you're in the journey and you've decided you're going to be an entrepreneur and you've built a bit of traction, you need to have honest conversations, radical candor with people sometimes. And it's okay to say, actually, what you're doing now is shit, or that's not good, or, it's not about just constantly, fluffing people up. It's about being honest with them. But at the super early stage, when it's just ideas, I want them to pursue that. But once they're as an entrepreneur, I definitely think that there's a responsibility to show up and to do your research and to learn and to listen and to adapt. And you should be probed. And if you're being probed in a way that is about wanting you to do the best, then that's helpful, and you should see it under that energy.
I feel like in our first year, we talk about this quite a lot, that in our first year there was a lot of fat in our business. There was just a lot of, I think, especially when you're early stage, now we're qualified in what we do, so we had that confidence behind us. But I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, they feel like they're just, well, masquerading and talking mince, and maybe it is early stage and there isn't a firm concept, so they fluff up the idea with all these maybe secondary and third things that they think give the concept more energy. Whereas we're of the opinion now, having done it ourselves, like, get rid of everything that's not core to the mission. Just stop talking shit, essentially. So how do you, I'm sure you've encountered a lot of businesses that more or less will suffer from those same issues. What do you think is a way to get that experience without going through the pain of that experience?
Yeah, so focus is important, because if you don't focus, then you're going to do a mediocre job across lots of different functions rather than doing an excellent job in one clear function. It's hard, though, because the types of people I think who are drawn towards being an entrepreneur or being in an entrepreneurial business, it's because they're big thinkers, they're creative, they look at a problem and they might see multiple different ways to tackle the problem. And so it's quite hard to be like, where do I focus? But you have to just decide, like, this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to be the best at that. And yeah, there might be a secondary product or service that falls out of that. But first of all, you have to validate the first one. Otherwise, you're going to get maybe a few customers across things, but maybe you won't build the same amount of loyalty. You won't be able to improve quickly enough because you're trying to improve across 8 different functions rather than just focusing on one thing being great. So focus. Particularly in the early days.
One thing that I was wanting to kind of talk about, particularly going back to the conversation around the way we are in more than just Scotland and the UK, less so I'd say in some parts of the UK, but definitely from my experience in Scotland, is we have a bit of a confidence issue as a nation, which was clear recently, but a bit of a confidence issue as individuals. And it wasn't until I started to go to even your conference I can't remember, a couple of years ago exactly what one it was, but there was a conversation, there was questions asked in the auditorium by young people who were clearly they were from the continent, so European, and the confidence in their approach and the confidence in their question and the confidence even to sound daft, which is something that I found quite uncomfortable initially, and I found quite difficult to kind of figure out as I've gotten older, to be okay to look like an idiot and be okay to say and question things that I don't understand to get to the end goal, because we're not really taught from an early age, I feel, in Scotland, or maybe there's some places, but we don't get taught to be confident in our own thought and to carry out, to just question what it is that we're seeing so that we can maybe do something different or do something better.
Yeah, I think I spoke to a group of young people recently, college kids, and I asked them, what are the perceived barriers to, say, starting your own business? And almost all of them said it's fear of failure, it's the risk factor, and I think that really translates into that's a confidence issue. And it was interesting once you kind of went deeper into that, it's going, okay, well, where does that come from? Why is that? And it's because I think it's exacerbated, because it's always existed, I think, because it's a little bit like, don't get above your station, you should just be here. And then in the modern world, it's also like, well, it looks like everyone is, getting famous quick or getting rich quick, the Instagram generation. And so it's about perception first. So actually having to admit you don't know is a really daunting thing. And yet, if anyone's listening to this thinking, oh, well, how do I do that? Well, for me, it's about, I just admitted I didn't know. And actually being a young person gave me complete freedom to do that, because no one expected that I should know.
Yeah.
And so if you own the fact that you don't know and you're humble and you put your listening mode on for 90% of the time, then you listen and you can regurgitate, listen and apply what you learn, and then you can slowly build that confidence. But I see a disadvantage sometimes, people coming in and they're almost trying to fake their confidence too much.
Yeah.
And it's really transparent, I think.
Super,
it's about
yeah.
being humble, listening, asking questions, and not trying to be, the oracle of all the information, because you're still in listening mode. You're still on that journey.
Yeah. No, you couldn't have said it better. That's absolutely. I mean, I think one thing that I don't know why, maybe it's my analogies are just horseshit, but I always refer things back to being in high school. Mm-hmm. So like I think everybody who's experienced high school has the same sort of general experiences, and as you get older, I think the thing you learn most in high school, besides obviously from an educational standpoint, the thing you learn most about is how people interact with each other and how people are and how confidence comes across poorly and how people perceive that. And the interesting thing about being young and being in high school is there's an instantaneous knee-jerk reaction to obscurity, to things that people aren't comfortable with. So fake confidence, which is something you get a lot of in high school, automatically comes across as fake confidence, and people tend to push people like that away because they're like, I can see that you're just full of shit.
Yep.
So I've always I always try and think back to those moments and say, what would I have thought about myself acting like this? It's a bit harder to do that to high school kids because they're right in the middle of it. But
Yeah.
Do you know? I think part of this is a much bigger like philosophical issue, right?
Yeah.
But
Let's
I
go
think
there.
part of the problem we've got is that we have built and are consistently reinforcing an individualistic society.
Yeah.
So we are like, I don't want you to do well because that means I won't do well, or I'm not doing as well. And so anyone that is kind of putting themselves out there, people want to knock back into place because you can't get ahead of the race. I don't want you to be ahead of me in the race. What is absolutely essential, and the way the world actually works, is cooperation, support for each other, an ecosystem of people all linking arms and lifting each other up. So what actually would be the ideal is you see someone who is going, I want to do this. You go, oh, maybe I could help you.
Yeah.
Maybe I could contribute to that. Maybe I know someone that could support you. And even as a young person going, how do I get involved in that? How do I jump in rather than being the first person to knock them down? Because not a single person on this world is successful on their own.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think as well, just to add to that, I know from myself from personal experience that you think that mistakes are amplified. And I think maybe it's worse now with social media, because you think that if I proclaim to the world that I'm now trying to do this thing and it doesn't go well, or you need to change and adapt, that everybody's looking at you and that's amplified.
Yep.
And just to second what you're saying there, like people feel like, I think it's actually more than just that they want to keep you in your place. I think it's if you and I go to school together and we're in the same year, let's say, and then you start Future X, then there's just no hiding from me to say, look, well, that's possible.
Yeah.
You know, Bruce was afforded the same opportunities that I was. So if he can do it, then there's no reason that I can't pursue. And I think just having that reality check is quite painful for some people. So I think, like some of the guys we went to university with, I think in their mind they thought, if you do that and you're successful with that, then that shows me that it's possible.
Yeah.
Whereas I think people like to think that there are barriers that they can't overcome.
Yeah. I mean, I yesterday caught up with someone who messaged me on LinkedIn and said that he was in first year when I was in sixth year at school, and that he knew I started the business at that point, and now he's got a business idea and would I meet him for some advice. I was overwhelmed by that and thought that was awesome. Like, I would never have expected this guy to, for me to have been on his radar and all the rest of it. And we had a conversation, and I think hopefully what he got from it was like, it's just a series of taking a couple of risks and see what happens and being accepting of rejection, and which is quite hard in the beginning. So I always think role models are really important and examples. But I also what I think is really important is that those people who are, doing something that's different is to be honest about how they actually feel when they're doing it. So I am still afraid of failing. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to lose what I've got. So of course I'm fearful. I'm conscious of it. That doesn't mean that I'm not aware of that. I've already built enough experience that I can fail forward. I'm pretty confident I will. If anything was to ever happen, I'd land on my feet.
Yeah.
But I'm still worried about things. I still get nervous. I still get anxious. I still doubt myself. We all have an imposter syndrome. When I went to university for 2 years, and I would sneak out my university halls in a suit for doing business stuff. I didn't want people to see me because I actually didn't want to create this thing where people were like, "Oh, Bruce owns his own business," and exactly as you've just said, is that like, well, if he can do it, but also like, what if he doesn't do it? Like, what if I fail and everyone suddenly knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's this. People, I think there's two things there for sure, but one of them is cultural. The other one not so much, but. We only ever get told the negative things. I think it's very rare and I think that the young gentleman who had come to you to say that he knew that you had done this, it's very, very rare that you get that sort of feedback. Mm-hmm. I don't think that it's cultural to the UK. I think it's just a general thing. We don't tend to disseminate that sort of information very clearly. Mm-hmm. You always tend to hear the negative, even it's guised in negativity, sometimes positivity. Like, for example, you were saying earlier on about how people would feedback that when you were younger, they were like, "I don't believe that this is all shit." Mm-hmm. Really, what they're saying is, I wasn't necessarily confident in you at that point in time, but I'm really impressed that you have actually managed to get there. But instead of just saying that to you, people tell you positivity through negativity. It's a really funny thing. Yeah. But we don't all too often hear about the impact that you've made on other people's lives, which is something that is a bit of an Instagram quote, right? But you don't. We could do a lot better to tell other people when they've been successful that they've been successful, even the little things. Mm-hmm. And I guess I've completely gone off track here with that point, but
no, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think that's absolutely something we could all do. It's kind of like every day acknowledging the positive impact we will make in our lives, and it's okay. It doesn't have to be a big gushing post. It can just be like, "Oh, hey, notice what you're doing. Looks really cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that." Or I attended your event. It was really inspiring. Thank you. All these things matter. It's positive affirmation. It tells you that you're actually doing something that is making a difference. Yeah. Sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you're like, am I making a difference? Like, I'm stressed out, I'm tired, I'm working really hard on this, and is it translating? That feedback is really important. Yeah. And also to, live what you preach, tell other people, when we're impressed with them.
The other thing I think, which is kind of harking back to what Nana was saying earlier on about when people see that you're doing something that they aren't doing themselves, and you both come from a similar background, or you both come from the same circumstances, and it's very much that question of, well, if he can do it, why can't I? Mm-hmm. I think there's also it's very difficult for people who are not doing it to be confronted with the questions that we ask ourselves on a daily basis when you do something like this. So the question you ask yourself and we ask ourselves regularly is what I'm doing of any value? Is it of any worth? Is it making any difference? Am I satisfied with the outcome of the work that I'm doing? Mm-hmm. Not just, I'm not saying that everybody's that way, but when it comes to a salaried job, sometimes the question is just, am I making enough money, or am I in a role that I'm okay and comfortable in? So when you have to ask yourself the question of, is what I'm doing worthwhile because this person has gone and done something, and the goals and the aspirations they have are so drastically different from not necessarily any fault of their own. They just have never been afforded the opportunity to ask themselves that question. Because in school and university, you don't ever get asked, why are you doing this? Mm-hmm. Like, why are you pursuing this line of work? Why are you pursuing this career? Why is this important to you? And it's something that you touched on, and both of you touched on, is when somebody's got an idea, why are you doing that? Mm-hmm. Like, what's the purpose behind you pursuing this idea? Is it just you want to have a window, a corner office, in a big skyscraper, with bags of money? Mm-hmm. Like, what is it a Scrooge McDuck idea that you've got? Or is it that you want? Is there something inherently, core to your opportunity, to what you want to do that you're pursuing?
I think the part of the challenge that we have as a kind of society that is interconnected, and communication channels are there for everyone to interact with, means that we're often worried about is this the right choice? Is it the wrong choice? What does that mean if I want that or I don't want that? So if you want the corner office, what does that mean? Does that mean I don't care about purpose anymore, or I don't care about the environment? I mean, I think the thing that maybe causes friction with different generations at the moment is because we have like a millennial generation who's going, I want the corner office, I want the great job, I want to do good, I want to be respected, I want to make an impact. And people are like, well, you have to choose one. Just choose one. And it's going, no, fuck you, I'll do what I want. Like, I'm actually not beholden, believe it or not, to any one decision or one choice. And who said I had to, not to freight into politics, but who said I had to fall into a particular area on that spectrum? I am not just, so to invoke Brexit here, I am not a Remainer or a Leaver. Fuck off putting me into those categories. I'm neither of those things. I have actually a much larger nuanced opinion on the whole debate. So you can want the corner office, you can want the great job, and hopefully you also want to be empowered, you want to enjoy your work, you want to feel valued, you want to have a contribution. And we need to be creating companies that create the environment for that to happen. Because those companies that create that environment will attract the best people, they will hold on to those people, they will get the best from those people, they will solve real problems, and your customers will be loyal to you because because people care about the workplaces. Customers do care about the companies that they buy from.
100%.
And so it's important to nourish that environment so that we provide the opportunity where you don't have to choose between doing good and making money.
You're absolutely right. There's no those two things should go hand in hand with each other. They shouldn't be individual or separated from each other. But when we're not asking those questions of people. I think a lot of people, there's a lot of, this is maybe a bit of a radical or an incorrect idea, and there's maybe a lot to learn from it. But for me anyway, I've noticed a lot more people being honest and open about their success not being true. So, you see it a lot on Instagram, you see it a lot on LinkedIn, actually. It happens from time to time where somebody who is perceived to be exceptionally successful and happy and wealthy and doing well, coming forward and going, I am actually not happy, and I'm not the person that you think that I am. And I always ask myself the question of where is that coming from? Like, why is it that people feel that way? Why is it that, people that have been afforded the opportunity or who have done the things that are always advised, like, grab life by the balls and just run and do what you want to do and make a difference? Why is it that all of a sudden these people who you perceive to be happy with their circumstances, even you and me have experienced that, where everything's going right, we're making good money, we've got our staff are happy, the office that we're in is exactly as we want, everything that we could have ever asked for is at our fingertips, and then we still feel deflated or uninspired by what we're doing.
Yeah, it's because everyone always wants the next thing, I think.
Yeah.
And it's I've had the good fortune to meet lots of very, very successful people, people who are very successful in their careers, people who have made a lot of money, and without doubt, making the money was not the thing that makes them happy. That may now enable them to do some really fantastic things. Yeah. But that's the thing they were actually like, oh, now I can do this. Now I can do something that is really meaningful. I think when there's a perception of success maybe online, I wonder if people just feel like, but I'm not actually successful. I think it might come back to like imposter syndrome, being like, but I'm not actually successful. Yeah. It's like, well, that's subjective because success is subjective. Yeah. So, anyone can be successful under their own metrics for success. Yeah. And we should be just a little bit more open about that. Be proud of yourself. Congratulate yourself when you're doing a good job. But there's also no point in lying to yourself. Because who are you kidding on, you need to be, I think what we want to encourage is more authenticity from people. Yeah. Is to be like, it's okay to be proud of what you do. It's okay to stand up and say, I'm great at this. I'm really good at this. And I'm doing well here. And the way you'll build the greatest amount of loyalty and trust, and if you want to build a big following, is to then also be honest about the areas you've not done so well.
Yeah.
And to have that conversation. So people go, you're a real person. You're not just a picture here that is, grabbing life by the balls and is on these amazing trips all the time. And God, you're bossing it.
Yeah.
But actually, they're not showing, what happened after you took the selfie.
Yeah.
The walk home in the rain, or all that.
Yeah, the reality
of
it,
yeah.
the truth of it. But people don't want to share those things. I don't think that we're teaching people the right things to pursue. I think there's always like buzzwords that people chase after. I think success, like people pursuing success, is a very odd metric. People that pursue happiness, I hate that was a bit harsh. I am disapproving of people telling other people that they need to find happiness because it's a horseshit metric. What does that mean? What does I want you to pursue happiness mean? It's a nice title of a book, perhaps.
Yeah, if you want someone to feel elation all the time, nobody feels that.
No.
Nobody feels that. And I think even just relating that back to the thing that you choose to do, let's say it is a purpose-driven business or something that you feel really passionate about, there are going to be moments where you are not enjoying the thing that you're doing in that business or whatever it is. And I think that, as Matt's saying, it's just a totally shit metric to measure anything by.
Totally. Obviously, I think the funny thing is I think most people recognize these things when you start to break it down and have the conversation, because you're like, well, you can't be happy unless you've been sad, because you need to move through the spectrum.
Yeah.
And you really you'll stop being happy because it will just become normal.
Yep.
So it will fizzle out. So then you'll have to dip in order to go back up again. It's like you can't be courageous unless you're scared. You have to have the opposite of that emotion at times in order to really benefit from the positive end of the spectrum. And I think that people are worried sometimes when they hear that, oh God, I've really got to love my job. I've got to jump out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
I've got to be really passionate. And they're like, oh, but I'm not. Does that mean I should leave my job? Does that mean I should do something else? And it's going, well, if it's consistently really bad and it's affecting you in lots of different ways, then you should consider a lifestyle change.
Yes.
If there are days when you're really tired and you're dragging yourself out of bed, welcome to the world.
Yeah.
That's normal.
Yeah. Maybe you need to change your diet and go to the gym.
Yeah.
Or meditate.
Or maybe you just had a really sluggish day and you're really tired, and it's normal. It's okay not to feel top of the world all the time. And in fact, if you did, I'd be more concerned. I'd be like, okay, is this real? Is this drugs? Is this what is it? What is causing you to be this energetic all of the time?
Yeah. There's a fall coming if you pretend to feel like that all the time. It's not natural. I hate coming into work some days. Mm-hmm. And I can choose not to come into work. Exactly. But I still hate it sometimes. Sometimes I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I don't want to see your face. I don't want to see anybody's face. I just don't want to be doing this.
My missus feels the same way.
But I think that's actually a really important point, because I get that too. And one of the things we've tried to do at FutureX is create flexibility, because I actually don't want someone coming into the office on a really bad day for them, because that might mean they have a really bad day today and tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Whereas if they chose to work from home, or they took the morning off or the whole day off, tomorrow they might come in refreshed and ready to engage.
They will.
But to force people to come in when they're feeling awful, and sometimes we don't know why we're not feeling good either. Sometimes we're like, I've not got just a sore head. I'm just feeling a bit weird today. I'm feeling a bit exhausted today. And I think when we think about how do we harness human potential, then you need to remember we're all humans. We are not machines. We cannot feel perfect all of the time.
No.
And actually, as employers, we should absolutely be thinking about how do we get the best out of people. And that sometimes means just take a personal day because you're not feeling good.
Yeah. And that should be okay.
It should be encouraged.
Yeah, because we that idea. You see, it's funny, but there's so many documented examples of what happens when people push themselves to the very limit of their ability every day. Mm-hmm. You look at any movie set in the 80s about Wall Street, and you've got a very clear example of what happens when people are redlining every day.
Absolutely.
You can't do it. And it's not something that we should encourage. But it's also not something that's particularly human. And I think going back to something that you mentioned earlier on about people who have made a lot of money and then them having the ability to be able to do things that make a difference. I think that's, I know your point wasn't that that's the way that it should be, but it's more the point that that's the way that people perceive it. Is like, first of all, I need to make a business that's successful financially to be able to make a business that's successful on a human level, on a social level, which I think is, well, I don't think it's the right way that we should be looking at it. I think we should be looking at it as you have the opportunity to do something good and then make a living out of that thing that's good.
I also think as well, just on top of that, like not every business, so I have total respect for all social entrepreneurs that their business, built into the fabric of the business, the actual endpoint is something that helps maybe people who are not as advantaged as we are. But even within a business that's like ours, for example, we build digital products, that's what we do. But if we have something in our business, maybe the way we treat our staff, or maybe there is a charitable aspect to that, that impact shouldn't be downplayed at all. You know, so if let's say, like in the past, we've done charity drives for the Trussell Trust, and let's say somebody's life potentially might be impacted by that, and that the ripple effects of that can be huge. So I think sometimes people get disheartened because what they're doing day to day doesn't seem like it's not curing cancer maybe, or it's not it's not something that's got the direct
you can't put it on a poster.
It's not something you can just it's not got the direct impact, but there's other ways of doing that.
Yeah, and you said the word, which is like the ripple of that action. And so you can have a ripple effect on really, small things about just how you treat people and how you manage your team and your environment and the kind of culture you try to create. That's something any business can do, You don't have to be your legal structure doesn't have to be social enterprise in order to be to look after your people. In fact, it's just a smarter thing to do. So I would definitely encourage people to look at, across the board of their organization, all the functions. Think, how do I just do a little bit better? How do I just improve that? Not because it's just the right thing to do, which it is, but also because the evidence shows that it makes you a better business, more resilient. It makes you, makes your customers more loyal to you. It's the smart thing to do, and it also is a thing that makes you enjoy your work more. It makes your colleagues enjoy work more. Not everything has to be about, do we give X amount of our profits away to charity? And I think that is the model, and I think this is important, is that the model for philanthropy is you make a lot of money and then you create a foundation and you kind of give to charities, or you put your name on a museum or things like that. And I don't decry anyone who has done that, because I think that was the pathway, that was the model in which people follow. What we're trying to do at FutureX is say that actually there is a new pathway to being socially responsible, and it is a layered approach throughout your entire journey. So yes, once you exit the company, because that's often when people then have the resources and the cash. Your company might be valued at $1 billion, but you don't have $1 billion in the bank until you exit. And then you've actualized on that money, and then you're like, what will I do with it? What we're saying is actually you can look after people, create a positive ripple effect throughout your company as you go, and then once you exit and you might be flush with cash, then you can still do some of the traditional things, but you don't have to wait. We can't wait 50 years again and again and again for a tiny handful of people to make a lot of money and then just trust and hope and pray that they do something productive with it.
No, because they won't. The history's shown that. That's not how that works.
Certainly not enough of them anyway. Not enough to make a
No, you're right.
change.
There are people out there that they take inheritance, or they take what they've earned and make something really positive with it. But as we've seen more times than not.
Excuse me, gentlemen.
The article is that getting too much protein from protein.
Can you see what my interests are?
Protein shakes and
working out, apparently.
But wealth gets inherited. It doesn't tend to get passed on to the people that need it the most. So there's possibly a time to maybe look at it and say that people that want to make a difference need to help themselves. They need to help people around them, and not just hope that somebody else is going to take care of it. And I think we're always looking at others to take the things that we want to change and change it for us. Government
Yep.
isn't going to make things better for us. That's not what their primary focus is.
And I think it's about recognizing that we've all got a role to play. So government has got a role to play.
Correct, yeah.
You've got a role to play. Your parents do, your carers do, the education system. Everyone has a role in society to play. Businesses have a major role to play. And realizing that it's not one person's responsibility. It's not solely my responsibility to uplift my own life either, because you guys need me to do well as much as I need you to do well, because we live in a collective economy where we need other people to do well. So it's quite a well-trodden philosophy of like, if I can do it, I can do it, I will rise up. But the truth is, and we said earlier about, how I was able to be successful, and maybe other people in my year at school would have been like, oh, well, if he's able to do it. I am privileged, right? I come from a place where I had a family that were supportive, that were encouraging. Not everyone comes from that environment. And so we need to encourage schools maybe to take on some of that role of nurturing.
Yep.
We need to encourage other organizations or people or initiatives or charities or whoever to make sure that we're providing that infrastructure of support. And so we don't have anyone falling through the cracks and then having to have an extra climb up just to get to an even keel, an even playing field.
Yep.
I think that's the great disadvantage we have, is that there's lots of factors we're not discussing. And that is that we first need to create a more level playing field in order for people to go. I was lucky I would go home and say, I want to do this. And, my mum and dad would be like, great, go and pursue it.
Yeah.
Not everyone necessarily that in my environment or my kind of close circle was saying the same things.
No.
But some people have none of that. Some people have just discouragement all the time.
Yeah.
And that chips away at your confidence. And that's what I think what prevents people from even having the space to move forward themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's maybe a dead horse at this point, but you need space to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And fail, and maybe the fail's not the right way to phrase it. I think you need space to make mistakes, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Because like everyone that starts out in their own venture, you make mistakes, but if that is the thing that stops you, that's where you failed. If you stop at a mistake, then you're not going to get anywhere, because you're going to make that the whole way through. Yeah. Even 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, your company or whatever will still make mistakes. You look at the biggest companies out there, Facebook, they make so many mistakes all the time.
Definitely.
And so I think we need to build that and that resilience. There's definitely a mental resilience that
I think it's funny when you think of saying sport. So you don't always win the race, you don't always score a goal. But you try again. The first time you ever if you're playing football, ever took a penalty and you didn't get it in, what do you just go, oh, well, never going to take a penalty again? You go,
exactly.
no, I'm probably going to do that again and again and again and again and again until I get it in. If you really care about it, you'll keep pursuing it. And yet we don't apply that same logic to other things in life. We go, oh, I got my fingers burnt there, so I'll not do it again. Whereas, the reason you scored the goal the next time is you realise that when you hit the ball like that, it goes over the bar. Rather than if I hit the ball like this, maybe it will go in the top left corner. And I'm sounding like I know anything about football, by the way. I know nothing about football.
I thought you were a professional.
I
have no idea.
I barely even follow football, just so anyone now thinks I'm a major football fan. But that, you iterate your approach. And I think that's what we need to think about in work and life, is that, you tried something that didn't quite work. It doesn't mean you don't do it again. To tell you a real practical example that happened to me in my life is we were partly through our journey, we'd run a couple of events in Silicon Valley, and we were being asked to do these programs with entrepreneurs in Abu Dhabi and LA. And so I thought, what would be great? An airline partner to come and fly us around the world, right? So I sent an email to the CEO of Virgin Atlantic, and I was like, Dear Craig, this is what I'm doing. I'd like you to sponsor us, become an airline partner. Got a response back. No, not interested. We already support this charity and that charity. This isn't really for us. I was like, totally gutted. 2 months later, I sent him an email again. And this time all I said in it was, Dear Craig, our mission... And so I said something like, I'm 20 years old and I've got this company. Our mission is to inspire and connect entrepreneurs around the world. Will you meet with me for 10 minutes, half an hour to give me some advice? Craig replied directly to me personally, CEO of Virgin Atlantic, and he wrote, "I love what you do. It's totally up our street. In fact, I want to fly you down to London to meet with our team." And Virgin Atlantic became our airline partner. Craig then introduced me to people at Virgin Media, Virgin Unite. We went on to deliver projects with Virgin in Chicago. Had I taken the first email and just went, "They're not interested," then I don't know what I'd be doing right now, because that relationship with Virgin and what that enabled us to go on to do is massively, part of the journey that's led me to being here right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's the small things that you do that make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, we've been there ourselves. Like, we've messaged someone what we thought was a great pitch, and they're like, "It's not really for us right now." And we go, "Oh well, that's that dead," you know. But who knows?
There might be another angle which you know that you would do, but you've just not maybe communicated it in a way that they understand.
Yeah.
So it's not about actually just completely orientating, your service offering. It's just about going, did I say the thing that mattered to them? Did I hook them in? And don't be afraid to ask them a couple of times to find the thing that, or just ask them what they care about.
Honestly.
Just on this point, like, see for someone that's maybe got an idea or a concept and they want somebody's endorsement, maybe they want Virgin Atlantic to sponsor something they're doing, when do you think's the right time to pitch it to them? When you have something there, or prior? Because I think there's a lot of people in that boat.
Yeah, so it depends. It depends what you want from them. So if you just want to get some advice to help you move forward, then I would email someone who you're really, that inspires you, and then you could maybe get them to maybe mentor you on a personal level, and that could help move you forward. Everyone loves to offer advice. I think if you want something from a business, then you need to think about, how do I add value to that organization? So I was pretty clear how I thought we added value to Virgin Atlantic, because we were encouraging international business, people flying between here and the States. So I knew that I thought there was brand alignment. I thought there was actually a good opportunity for their company. But there's equally been lots of people I've reached out to who I admire just because I want them to help me, not because I want their company to help me. And sometimes once you build the relationship, then opportunities open up for maybe there to be a business-to-business relationship. But I think the biggest thing, and certainly and from my experience, is that we're all people. Try and build a personal, human relationship with people where possible, and that be the basis for how you operate with them.
Yeah.
Because then people will do you favors, they want to help you out. Don't forget that whoever the chief exec of whatever company is, they're also just a person. They're probably. I've got hobbies and interests. There might be some overlap and crossover.
Yeah.
Get to that kind of human level with people, and then that's how you build trust and relationships.
But you don't see it that way though, right? It took us a wee while to figure that out, that the guy that you're trying so hard to speak to, or the woman that you're trying so hard to speak to, they go home to their families at night and have dinner, and probably just chill out and watch Netflix, and that's what they spend their time doing as well. Like, there's a normality behind these massive corporations that you maybe want to have a chat with. But it's very hard to see that because when you read the articles online that goes 10 traits of a high-powered CEO, you're like, shit, I'm not doing any of those things.
I'm only doing 4 of the 7.
Exactly. And then you go, oh well, if they are, they're following all those things, therefore they're nothing like me.
Yeah.
But that's just not real life.
No. Nobody reads a book a day. That doesn't happen. That's not how the world or human beings work. It's something that we do. We do not think about business as being a personal thing. We maybe because business has become impersonal. We don't. It's been so often you see business as being a pursuit of a financial goal. Again, going back to what we were talking about being a human experience and something that people do to enrich society rather than enrich their pockets. Something that we've separated. We've made businesses be these entities that are capable of great evil, so therefore they can't be human, they can't be normal people in there. And it's something, it's hard to imagine, like, companies that do horrific things, 9 out of 10 of them, like Facebook, when they do something super fucked up, it's just normal people that are going to their job that day. They're not all part of a big conspiracy to do fucked up things.
Not.
There was a bad call made, somebody made the wrong decision, and then it came across really bad, but they're just people.
It's easy to to point the finger and go, you're the bad guy here.
Yeah.
You know, Facebook is a colossal organization.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not really sure we've ever had an equivalent of this where that many people are inputting data all of the time. You know, Facebook needs to make somewhere between 500 million to 1 billion decisions every single day on their platform.
Yep.
So no human is making that decision. It's an algorithm, it's a machine, and they can set their intention of this is how we'd like our system to be used.
Yep.
But other people can go, well, actually, there's a way for me to manipulate that or to hack that. And then we're really super critical that they didn't think of that in advance. You know, why didn't you think of that?
It's unrealistic expectation of companies that it's not fair.
Yeah.
I use Facebook as an example because they're in the news so frequently of doing things
Totally.
fucked up. But they
And also, you know, I was only playing like devil's advocate.
No,
to get
you're
the other
right.
side
You're
of
100%
that,
right to do
because
so.
I think that equally, we can't be afraid to say at what point is this company maybe too pervasive and what are the restrictions we need to place on them. I don't think that just because a company has good core values, which is what I advocate for, that means that then they somehow
Are
sit
exempt.
above any regulation or any change or any inquiry to them.
Yep.
We still need to exist in that type of world.
I think for a lot of companies, if they make like a big mistake like that, the draw is to either downplay it or not acknowledge it, because for a lot, especially online, if someone makes a mistake like that, a high-profile mistake, the pitchforks come out.
Yeah.
And there isn't really a road to redemption for a lot of people. So I think a lot of people, not even just Facebook or big companies, but people in general, don't want to expose those mistakes because then the pitchforks come out and then their reputation's damaged. But there needs to be a road to rebuilding that. So like, yeah, we made a mistake. This is how we're going to try and fix it. I can't remember who it was. I think it was it might have been Firefox made a big mistake with, just as getting inside baseball here, but essentially the signatures of how you verify websites, there was a glitch in that, and they didn't try to play it down. They just said, we made a mistake, here's how we're rectifying it.
Yep.
And that obviously goes back to their ethos, because that's built into their ethos about honesty and privacy and all of these things. So I think in modern businesses, maybe through, not ignorance, I think maybe because they don't have to follow the prescribed paths because of the internet, we can, like you're saying for Future X and all the businesses that go through this, they can set out the principles at the start and then apply those principles to everything that they do.
So, I mean, on a practical level for us, we ran our Impact Summit in Glasgow on the 15th of May at SWG3, and it was a great event. It's
a great venue.
It was a really cool venue. We got lots of really good feedback, but like everything, we also got some critical feedback on like areas to improve. Like, typically, you get that and you look at it and you go, right, okay, noted, oversight there, we should have done that a bit differently. And then you hide it away and then maybe you subtly change next time. Well, we wrote a blog about it and was like, these are the things that we took into consideration. This is how that decision was made in the first place, just so people understand that it wasn't, sometimes things are not done because you didn't think about them. It's just that your thought process was maybe, skewed, or it wasn't you hadn't considered everything. And so it's also about saying, we're listening to your feedback, by the way. Like, we read what you said to us. And if you're saying that the text on the back of your card was too small to read, well, then we want to fix that. But I also want to tell you that I acknowledged it, I heard it, and I want to move forward. I think problems and mistakes for businesses is a great opportunity to communicate or to demonstrate how you solve problems. Monzo, the digital bank, I noticed they had something recently where there was a delay in their transactions between accounts. They were saying, normally it comes through instantaneously, and they sent a kind of push notification to everyone on Monzo being like, we've got a delay. Even though my personal account wasn't affected, I still got that information saying there's been a delay, more details, you click through, and they'd already solved the problem, and they had a complete account of how they solved the problem. And actually, all I left with was going, by the time I saw this message, the problem was already dealt with, you've been really clear, you've not tried to hide it, and now I have greater trust that if there is a problem, you know how to respond to it.
Yeah. But I mean, that is absolutely how people should be doing it. We're not, I think we're getting better at it, but we need to. That's another thing that we need to do is just nurture the idea of mistakes being acceptable, because we don't, and it frustrates the life out of me with politicians. I think it's the worst culture that we have created for our political leaders, where it's this: a politician has said something inappropriate. Or sometimes inappropriate is maybe not the right example to use. Sometimes when they say something inappropriate, they can fuck off. But sometimes when they do something, they make the wrong decision. There's a mistake made. Somebody does something by accident, and we call for their head. Yeah. Like, it's not even an interest in them fixing the problem. So basically what we're saying is we have sought out, elected, and then had in power somebody who we believed was the correct choice. And based on this one mistake, we now think there's somebody better that should take their place who's not going to make that mistake. It's complete lunacy.
Or fix the problem.
Yeah, or just own it and apologise and move on.
Mistakes get made, and the person that made the mistake should be given the opportunity to rectify that mistake. If they keep making the mistake, then maybe there's a call for, maybe you're not the right person for this job.
Absolutely. It's not a case of just going, made a mistake, the figurehead should go. It's not. It's very like reactionary. It's about satisfaction. The problem, solution, move on. Yeah. And that life's more nuanced than that.
So we need accountability, but we don't need accountability in the outcome of loss of job. It's not how that needs to go.
I also think for companies or individuals, grappling with how to tackle this, it comes back to like authenticity. So what was your genuine, authentic intention?
Yeah.
If you made a genuine mistake, you should feel quite confident within yourself to be like, that was a genuine mistake, here's why. And if you get a bunch of criticism, you can sail through it because you're like, that's just noise because this is why I actually did it. And if you're building a loyal tribe where you're continually doing that within your business, then people will get that. People will trust you, and those that don't, then that's okay. They're maybe not right for you. But if you're not being authentic and you make a mistake, I think that's when you're more likely to want to cover it up or hide it.
Yeah, I mean, if you cover it up and hide it and somebody finds out, that's 10 times worse than if they just said, "Oh, look, we made this mistake and this wasn't right."
Definitely,
because you've then lied. You've then
purposely
you've made it
way worse.
You've now done something that you shouldn't do when it comes to these sorts of things. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to speak to you about this because you obviously came at this from a very young age. So it's interesting to see somebody who, when you started it, you wouldn't have had all the cards in your hand. You wouldn't have known the answers. And in many cases, I'm sure you didn't even know what the questions were yet. Like, you just had this, obviously, a calling to go down this route. Have you found that it's been a push, like a struggle to get other people to understand where you're coming from? Or have you found that there's a genuine belief that the direction you're going in is the correct one?
I think that lots of people really, really, really get what we do and what we talk about. And I think that's why we've managed to, be fairly successful. We've grown definitely one of the, most prominent entrepreneurship events in Scotland. We engage, around the world with people because people get it. Like, what we're talking about is stuff that resonates with people, and it's absolutely it's the direction of travel. There are people who exist within positions who, they benefit from the status quo, and so every now and then you get people who don't want you to succeed, or you get people who don't want to amplify what you're doing, and that's all. I take no notice, really. I think that I am not beholden to anyone. I've not got one single customer or one single funder or any of these things. So I have the freedom to pursue what we believe to be truly needed. Yeah. And we can adapt and we can change. And I think that's what builds the momentum. You basically say, this is what the people want, and we're just a representation of a community. Yeah. And you'll get resistance. People, it's changing a lot now, but initially when we were talking about purpose-driven business, people thought we were tree huggers, that we were all about being really fluffy, and there was no business behind it. But the two things I love is I love thinking about how you can make a positive impact and how you do that across your business. And I also love the processes and doing the customer journey and optimizing our content and how we do our recruitment acquisition and retention strategy, how we build the company aspect. I love all that stuff. I love the nitty-gritty of, okay, how are we going to communicate better with there? How are we going to get better data from that? I love the business side of it as well. And that is what enables me to make a positive impact. That's what enables our company to do well.
Yeah.
And so having a love for the two means that you can actually do something that is really meaningful. But you can't really, if you want to build a company that has big impact, you have to do both. You can't just go, we're going to be socially responsible, but not think about how we optimize our sales process.
Yeah.
Because then you'll not optimize your sales process. So you need to have both. They need to be in tandem with each other.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Before we end, I think this is reaching the hour mark. Well, we've passed the hour mark, actually. Only just one other question, which is, what's the next steps for you? Is there something that's happening in your business that you're doing moving forward? And then if you've got, is there anything that you need from people? Is there anything that people can do to help or get involved or be a part of it?
Can I just add to that? So three last questions here. It's just, it's not obvious, I don't think, for some entrepreneurs that are coming out on their own now, what the right steps should be. So if you could just briefly outline what you've seen in other businesses as the correct steps to take. So if it's a product, is it build your MVP, then go to market? Or should you go for investment? Or what do you think is the correct mix of things?
We're talking a whole other hour on that one.
You'll need to come back.
I'll come back to answer that one. No, I think what's next for us is we want to. We have a very physical platform at the moment. We want to digitize a lot of that so that access to the information and content and people that we engage with around the world is much more accessible.
Okay.
So over the course of the next 12 months or so, we'll be building up that element of it so that there's greater accessibility to what we do, and you don't have to wait 6 months to attend the next big conference.
Yep.
So we should hopefully be announcing a lot of that stuff towards the end of July, which is very exciting for us.
Excellent.
We're launching our startup summit on the 10th of July.
Okay.
That is a great place for people who are looking to start and grow their business. Content is really structured towards people who they've got their idea, they're maybe looking to see what that validation phase is, where do they go next, all the way through to people who have a business and need that real support. Because there is no one pathway. I think that's the difficult thing about that question, is that there is no one road to follow. I think people often think that there is, and they just need to find out which path to go on. But people will give you conflicting advice. People will say different things. I definitely think that if you're starting out, try to be as lean as possible. Try to build the minimal viable product and ask people and test it a bit. If you can hold off raising investment, for equity investment, that is, for as long as possible, then you'll get a much better deal. So if you can build traction, you can show that traction, then you'll be able to raise money at a much cheaper rate.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you go in really super early, then you should expect to have to sell your company, sell a larger equity stake in your business, because the investor's taking a much larger risk.
Okay.
In Scotland, we're very, very lucky. There are lots of organisations that will support you financially, give you advice, guidance, programs, hone your skills. I know people who have raised £1 million in a series of competitions and grants. If you can do that without ever having to sell equity in your company, then pursue those things.
Yeah.
The final point here is that there is a thing called Scotland Can Do, and that is a nationwide initiative where all the different people who support business in Scotland, we all speak to each other, we all try to coordinate as much as possible. And if you go to the Scotland Can Do website, there's a directory of all the support available for businesses in Scotland, and it's a great place to start.
Awesome.
and think, actually, I need to speak to that person, and this person. And that can, it's always taking that first step. If you're really at the beginning, take the first step, and going on that website could be it.
Spot on. Fantastic.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for
Really
having me.
appreciate
That hour
it.
flew by.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it did. We'll definitely have to have you on again, and we can go into that subject a little bit more and have a chat around that. But thank you so much for
Definitely
being here.
appreciate it.